So what's on your mind, Daryl?
Well, yeah, I mean, I got a lot in my mind, man. I mean, I just let's see, I guess I did the perfect thing to make yourself go completely crazy, and I read Aldous Huxley's A Brave New World. Then I watched one of the movies, which was a couple, shitty movies. I watched one from the 1980s. It was pretty good. Then I read Orwell's A Brave, no, 1984. Then I watched the 1956 BBC movie that they put out, which is a horrible rendition. But
Not as
those,
bad as the 1984 movie.
no, not that bad. No, it was better than that one because it's closer to the book, which I only seen a few minutes into that one you're talking about, and it was enough to no, this isn't. But so those two books got me really going, and then I'm reading another book right now called The Road to Wegman Pier, another Orwellian book, by George Orwell, and oh man, I see a lot of similarities between, these things that are going on today, and I was even messaging in our little Facebook Messenger group about it, and it's like, you have the dumbing down of Americans or just society in general. We're overdrugged, we're overstimulated, we're undereducated, we're overstressed, and we're just plugged in, and we're not reading, we're not interacting with people, and we're just being controlled by, all sorts of things. If it's not a narcotics, psychostimulant drug, it's alcohol, it's legalization of marijuana, which I was always for. Now I'm having questions because it just reminds me of the Selma from A Brave New World, which is this, take your Selma and you forget everything. It's almost like ecstasy, really. Like, oh, everything's great, just take your Selma. Did you get your Selma rations today? And it's just, it's really like, and then I started to watch this documentary on the charisma of Adolf Hitler and,
Okay.
and how he got the German population to just totally back him. And I seen the resemblance between Trump and Hitler, which, yeah, that's, rhetoric, it's a talking point. But when you talk about what Hitler did, is he tapped into the anger of the German people, and he tapped into the anger of, they were...
No, they were defeated. World War One.
Well, they were
They
defeated
had all
by
these
World War
sanctions
One.
against them. They had
Yeah.
this channel right through their country.
Hmm.
I was going to add to that is it's rhetoric on that side, but
Hmm.
when it comes to the Bernie Sanders, the protest Wall Street, whatever that, I forgot what that was called again.
Hmm.
Even some of the Ron Paul stuff, it seems like it's a trend.
Hmm.
You just have a left and a right version of it, but I'm seeing the same.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. I mean, it's just
Hmm.
you're arguing a different side of the coin.
Well, what I
But
told...
it's the same attitude though.
Right, and what I told Steve yesterday, my son, is that it's like the only differences I can really find with Hitler's style of government versus, say, Stalin's side of government, and they both hated each other.
Okay.
And I thought it was really interesting because the only thing that Hitler did differently from Stalin was Hitler was up front saying, I am the leader. Whereas Stalin was more like, I am the representation of the people. We need to follow this. But they did exactly the same thing. Now you look at estimates of up to 40 million deaths in the Soviet Union under communism, under Lenin to Stalin from 1919 to 1959. And the atrocities are just well documented. Another book I'm in the middle of reading, which I had my kids read, which is the 3 volumes of the Gulag Archipelago. And you're talking, this is, 12,
Awesome.
this is like
Heavy reading there.
yeah, this is really heavy and hard reading. I mean, you're talking reading about torture tactics, and these are real people. So when I have that kind of a background of history, and then I'm reading, Brave New World, 1984, and I'm just seeing these similarities in this totalitarian, authoritarian government where your freedom is gone. Free speech gone. Freedom of thought gone. This is where we get the brave Big Brother is watching you. This is where we get thought criminals, thought crimes. And I just see a lot of that today. It's like you can't.
Is this happening with, yeah, there's been decades of the sexual harassment stuff being okay, and there's a lot of cases where this is not a good thing, but it's almost become the new being accused of being racist now.
Yeah.
It's the one thing that's going to damage you whether you did it or not, and the accusation itself is going to hold as much weight of the reality. And then there's little accountability for people making that accusation now. And I'm kind of wondering, it's almost like a witch hunt in a way. And are we seeing just the same thing that we do as somewhat civilized human beings? I mean, is this just a cycle, repeating itself?
I think so. I really do think it's very cyclic in nature. I think that there's always been and this is one thing that in 1984 where they talk about a lot, where there's this book by Goldstein, who is the enemy of the state, the enemy of the party in control. Goldstein was one of the leading revolutionaries. Then they skew the perspective of, he was a founding member of the revolution that brought the party into power after his atomic war, but then he turned and tried to pervert the revolution, when in reality everything was flip-flopped. So it's kind of interesting in this book, 1984, for those who haven't read it or watched any of these movies, is they have all these slogans like war is peace, ignorance is strength.
Ministry of love.
Ministry of love.
Which tortures people, yeah.
Right. Yes, and it's Ministry of Plenty, which it leads to starvation. It's just, everything is upside down backwards. We have a lot of similarities going on now, to where if you look at the Republican Conservative Party, you see people like Milo, who is an openly, gay person who gets along perfectly well with a right-wing Christian. You have people like Joe Rogan. You have Ben Shapiro, a Jew, who is being called a racist, a Nazi.
Well, Milo too has been called those horrible, those things too.
Right. So, but you have this weird collection of these people who aren't supposed to get together, coming together under the banner of free speech, which is a liberal thing, and these are conservatives. But I guess it's a classic liberal thing to believe in free speech.
But then there's that neoliberal thing, like the anti-fascists, where they're attacking people at conservative events speaking.
Yeah, anti-fascists.
You get liberals at UCLA trying to shut down conservative speakers. My best way to shut something down is not show up. Don't give them the light of day. Don't give them their 15 minutes of attention. But that principle that they should be able to speak, even the UCLA has traditionally supported groups that are outer fringe groups speaking. So why are these classically liberal venues and groups doing what they can, charging Milo $8,000 last second for security fees and doing everything they can to politically stop speech? It's backwards, like you said.
Yeah, and it's just the thing with their using language, they're manipulating language. You have the anti-fascist, which is a terrible thing. A fascist.
They act like fascists, though.
Exactly. So that's what I said. Everything is backwards. You have these liberals who are, for women's rights and anti-sex crimes, anti-sexism, but yet they're the same liberals in Hollywood with all the shit going on in Hollywood, where they're the ones who are sexually assaulting and raping women. And then on top of that, you have this weird thing where, Kevin Spacey sexually assaults a minor, and then he comes out as gay, like that's okay. And then we forget the fact that, he tried raping a minor. I don't understand it. So that's the
classic thing where if I were gay, I'd actually really be pissed at that.
Oh, they are.
Now you're associating underage. You're associating without consent. And it's like, well, I was gay. It's like, wait. That almost sounds a hateful way of putting it. Honestly, if you're trying to, that's your excuse. That sounds like something that was out against the group would say that.
Well,
where they constantly confuse homosexuality with pedophilia. That kind of.
The Catholic Church couldn't do it. They couldn't pull that off. But for some reason, it's okay for Hollywood to pull it off. Maybe because I don't know.
It's these hypocritical.
They donate millions of dollars to the liberal media and all these pundits and the politicians on the left. I don't know. It just bothers me.
It's such a lockdown industry where you're afraid to speak out against this horrible monster who's allowed to be in charge of everything, basically. Mm-hmm. I thought this was the beacon of truth and openness and what's right. Yet, this, they're imploding it. It was funny. I saw a thing that said IMD, which was the Internet Movie Database.
Yeah.
And it changed to say Internet Molester Database.
I seen that. That was great. That was good.
But, what's going on? You get church groups that it comes out there doing this. You got Hollywood that comes out there doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Conservatives acting like socialist liberals are acting like fascist control freaks. And then you get liberals. It just doesn't add up. There's huge, crazy anti-gun debate stuff, and libertarians would be for having rights. Period.
Mm-hmm. But you wouldn't want to take the rights away from law-abiding citizens over the individual wacko nut job who does something crazy because maybe they didn't take their medication, maybe they slipped through the cracks of society. So we need stricter laws. It's like, why? You haven't been able to force the laws correctly that we have already.
But those same people that want the stricter laws are criticizing the war prohibition, which was there was a real problem. I could see why, reading into why they did prohibition, because you had hospitals with just, basically they're drunk alcoholics hospitals.
Yeah.
It was a real problem because alcohol got much stronger than it was traditionally, but they're the same ones that say, "Oh, the drug war is really winning, isn't it?"
Mm-hmm.
And therefore legalization of all these drugs too. But then I don't get it. I really don't. Coming from both extreme, where's the middle? Where is there just the sane middle ground?
And that's what I'm actually trying to promote. And I even been thinking about starting to do some writing. Okay. And I've been told, maybe I should write a book because I have a lot of stuff to say, and I seem to put it out better when I think and have time to write versus just spew it out off the cuff. And I believe that we need to, I was talking to Chrissy about this last night. Well, she's fallen asleep because I tend to lull her off to sleep on my words, but we need to find a new age example of a modern hero. Now, a hero isn't somebody like a Hollywood actor or an NBA star or NFL player who, does a lot of drugs and drinking and beats their wives, or in Hollywood rapes somebody. A politician
our
who's
points
corrupt.
We've been making.
Yeah.
About our heroes.
Right. And I strongly believe that people like me, people like you, our wives, our friends, people who have been through a lot of stuff in their lives but aren't beaten down by what they've been through, and they still find a way to wake up in the morning and go to work, do what they need to do, whether it's clean the house, just do something. The people that can experience a lot of hardship but don't use it as a crutch to say, look at me, I'm such a victim, I need all of this support. The people who don't do that need to really take a minute, look in the mirror in the morning when you're brushing your teeth, combing your hair, putting your makeup on, and say, you know what? I am my own role model. I am my own hero because I've been through a lot of shit and it hasn't beaten me and I'm still going strong. We don't have a lot of examples like that today because you have these Hollywood stars, NFL stars, politicians. Yeah, they've been through a lot of stuff, but you want to know what? It's people that I'm talking about have been through a lot of stuff, but they're not taking it out in this power game by oppressing weak people, abusing people, molesting people, taking drugs and alcohol and beating their wives.
The concept's been thrown at you as you watch a movie, you watch, it warps your sense of what things are really like.
Mm-hmm. There's more.
You're not a hero because you play a game really well. You're not a hero because you could shoot and do all this secret agent crap. It's kind of skewing what the average, being a strong person is actually listening.
Right.
Being a strong person is actually taking the needs of others above your own needs. And you don't make a good movie out of that.
No. Well, it's interesting. We've all heard of the phrase, people who have any background in Christianity, the Bible and whatnot. We've all heard the phrase, the meek shall inherit the earth. Now, meek doesn't mean weak. Meek.
But that's been defined for you, so go ahead,
Meek does not mean, the original intention behind that phrase does not mean the weak victim will rise up and inherit the earth, meaning they're going to bring down those on high.
Like all these
what it means is
weird computer dorks.
What it means is the people who are strong but don't exercise their power to oppress and manipulate and abuse
they're humble,
people.
But
so it's
strong
like,
in their own inner.
Right, but you don't abuse it. So what it means is basically the common man. And this gets a little touchy-feely with Marxism and whatnot, but I'm talking about the guy who is not abusive of his power, but has basically said, you know what, I'm not putting up with this shit anymore.
Yeah, just like the phrase, turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
It's so easy, like says, oh, that means get slapped. That means, let someone slap you and then slap me again. It's like, sir, may I have another? It's like, no, it's not like that at all.
No, that's if somebody insults you.
If you were in a position of like a slave or a position of weakness against a higher power, it's actually a sign of defiance. It's like, bam, you get slapped and you stood up, and it's like you stand right back up, and it's like, you're looking at them again. That's what that phrase really means.
It's like, why do we fall? So we can learn how to get back up.
It's getting back up, basically.
It's people like that. If you
get back up
if
in
you
a
fall,
quiet but defined way.
If you fall and you can't get back up because, I've fallen and I can't get up, it's like, that goes for a certain amount of people. But if you're young and you have strength, physical strength, if you have any kind of willpower, you are not going to let the speed bumps in life be turned into mountains that prevent you from achieving your goals. It's interesting.
I mean, that's the defiance. It's like that kid, someone that has a mental disability that chugs on despite society laughing at him, people laughing at him, and become more productive than your average couch sitter.
Yeah, I just think we need more positive role models like that, and I don't think you need to look at other people. If you're going to look at other people...
I'm going to say positive examples. Not role models, but positive examples.
Look to your parents, look to your siblings, look to your friends, look to people that you know, because you can see them for who they are. We only see these politicians and movie stars and athletes, what they want to show us. And then, oh my God, this breaking news article comes out. This, actor that you've admired for all these years, turns out that he tries raping little boys or raping women using his power. It's like, oh, now I feel dirty because I idol worship this person.
I miss the days. I'll interject here. I remember I watched a lot of older stuff. John Stewart, or like It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
Main actor.
Jimmy Stewart.
Jimmy Stewart. Yeah. And it's funny as you read these people's bios. It's like, oh, yeah, one was a pilot in World War II. James Doohan in Star Trek lost a finger fighting in World War II. Yeah. And what happened to where our Hollywood heroes, Skipper from Gilligan's Island, all these people were basically, even Leonard Nimoy, he served in the Navy.
Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers was a military vet, and look what he did.
Yeah. I have to bring up a point about that because there's a false story circulating about an aspect of that. But
of course.
That's the thing is these people. I look into these because I watched something from the 60s, 50s, 60s, and I was like, oh, who is this? What did they do? What happened? When did they die? And then you see, it's like, wow, they were normal people, kind of like sports people back in Babe Ruth days and stuff. They went to a normal job.
Right.
And that's the problem with it. You know, now you get someone that's just raised. It's like a business person. They're not building it from the ground up. They're taking over from their rich family or their rich dad, and it's kind of like the same thing. You don't have people who have these histories of doing truly heroic things.
Well, this
like part, you know, they start off being little punks. You know, even someone like newer, like Bruce Lee. If you look what he did before he even got into TVs and movies.
Yeah. Well, one thing talking about that is like when you look at people did. It's interesting with like I'm just taken back by reading this book, The Road to Wigman Pier, and it's
what is that again?
The Road to Wigman Pier.
Okay.
Orwell.
I've not heard this one.
Yeah, Orwell wrote it, and it's. I'm only about halfway through it right now, but the beginning is. It's enlightening. It talks a lot of. So far, it's talking about coal miners back in the day in England. Now you're talking about some hard work. And, you know, these people work, you know, an 8-hour shift in the mines, and they're in a 5-foot space. They're on their knees. They're pickaxing that coal and off the wall. They're shoveling it up, and they're on their knees. So they, you know, it's different than when you're standing and you can really get the leverage.
They'll have all those.
They're just on their knees, so they're using arms and core strength, and you know they're not barely wearing any clothes because it's so hot. They're breathing in all the coal dust. So by the time they're 40, they got the black lung, and they're pretty much done. But to get to work, they had to walk anywhere from 1 to 5 miles in one direction through this tunnel that's only about 5 feet high. So if you're a tall person, you're basically on your hands and knees, and they would develop, and you know, they'd have the support beams that would hold the ceiling up, and they would get what they would call in reference button backs, because on every vertebrae in your back, you would have like a permanent scab from, you know, hitting these beams as you're, you know, crawling along. And you know, so it's like you're going down 1,000 feet into the earth, 1 to 5 miles, depending on what mine you happen to be working. Then you do your 8-hour shift. You didn't get paid for the travel.
Yeah, you're going to.
So it's
before
it's like,
OSHA and rules and.
Right. So it says in the book, it's imagine climbing a mountain before you go do your job, and then before you go home, you got to climb a mountain again. And now when you're done, you're going uphill to get out. And name anybody who would do that now. Yeah. So we really it should. I don't know. For me, it was humbling because it's like, in my line of work, I've been a garbage man for 20 years, and I started off throwing trash in the back of a truck, you know, hard physical work. And I remember hanging on to the back of the truck, holding on for dear life, and thinking to myself, how did I get here? You know, I'm 19 years old, and I'm hanging on for dear life. We're doing 50 miles an hour down this road.
It's probably cold at times.
Oh, very cold, you know. And
like brutally cold.
I've worked in swings of temperature from 120 with a heat index to minus 40 with a wind chill. So I've worked through it all, and it's terrible. But now we have the millennial generation. I'm not trying to knock millennials, because I think the millennial generations have got a bad rap. But we have, from the corporate perspective, we have the millennial generation that we need to try to find a way to lure this new generation to come work in the garbage industry.
Working hard is not having a juice bar.
Well, now we
stocked
have
thing.
Right. Well, now we have in the residential, we have these ASL trucks, automatic side loads, where it's the arm that comes out, grabs it, and dumps it. And they're talking about restructuring all the locker rooms nationwide in our corporation towards like a NFL, NBA style locker room, to where you have your own locker with your name on it. It's like, you are really just catering to these people. You have your sense
of home, yeah.
Your
sense of identity. And
you know, you're not going to get away from the hard work that it takes to do the job. But it's become so much easier than what it used to be. It's like even coal miners today. Like, I come from a coal miner background on my dad's side. My uncle, you know, I have uncles and ancestors that have been coal miners for a long time, and it's gotten easier with the technology now. But it's still hard work. Now, hard work, there's something to be said for it. And speaking of work, like I've been working 6 days a week. I've been in this line of work for 20 years now. I've thrown my back out several times, broken bones, and I've never missed a day of work because of my injuries, because I had bills to pay and kids to take care of, whatnot. And we're doing our show here, our little show, whatever you want to call it, but it's an outlet for us.
Yeah.
But I'm also trying to do all this research. I'm trying to read books, and I've had dreams. Like the last dream that I had that really affected me was the last thing I said before my alarm goes off at 3 o'clock in the morning was, I said to myself, you could fill libraries with information that I don't know.
Yeah.
And I've been feeling so dumb. So
the more you
ignorant.
read too, how much you think you kind of have a good grasp of something, and then you just spend hours and hours researching, and you find out that how much you really don't know, and then how utterly clueless 90%, 95% of the rest of the world is. And we ran into that. I mean, I run into that with technical stuff all the time.
Yeah, I can imagine, because that's always changing.
Yeah, well, I mean, you think you have a good grasp of something, and typically when someone thinks they do, they don't. And then you start to dig into it, it's like, wow, I don't know shit, you know?
Yeah, and you have to constantly be retrained, because we've talked a lot of times how you got this new, you got to, train on this, you got to train on this. And,
yeah, it's never ending. I almost wish I had a job that you did a task and it was done with, and you don't touch it for,
Yeah. So I just, our jobs are physically easier, even the harder jobs. Like even roofers. My father-in-law was a roofer for 25 years, had his own company, and man, you want to talk about hard work and SOB. And he had to carry 2 stacks of shingles on his shoulder and climb a ladder.
You mean it's before Home Depot would deliver to the rooftop, or?
Yeah, now it's just. But that's what I'm talking about. It's so much easier now in any aspect. It's easier than what it used to be. Even drain cleaning. I worked for Roto-Rooter, where you have the manual feed the snake down these lines. Now it's push lever and it just feeds it yourself, and it's like, oh, that's a lot easier. But this is a 400-pound machine.
They're still hard.
That I would have to take downstairs and then lift back up each step one at a time, and it's hard work. But you're not going to experience much hard work with technology, but it's still time consuming. And and that's the one issue that I know we wanted to touch on is, man, like I get up at 3, and by the time I get home, it's 4 o'clock, sometimes 5 o'clock, and
so
then
do your
it's
math,
like
you have dinner then.
Then right away hop in a shower, I help make dinner, or I make dinner myself, or Chrissy gets off earlier, so she'll have some dinner ready, or we'll just eat whatever. And then, so it's like,
we're sitting all the time.
And then we try to go to bed by like 7 o'clock, so we try to be sleeping by 8, so we can get at least 6 hours of sleep, maybe 7, but usually it's like 6.
You're supposed to have 7 to 8 hours, which I laugh at.
We get like 6, but in a 24-hour period, I'm looking at like 3 hours to myself, because I'm trying to do yoga every day, meditation every day. So when that's all done, and we can just sit and do nothing, it's like, oh, we got 2 hours out of a 24-hour day.
You rinse and repeat, and you do the same thing. Before you know it, weeks and weeks have gone by, and you haven't done. Yeah, and the funny thing is, you and I both have friends that'll sit there and tell you, "I just watched the season 3 of Living Dead. I just saw this movie. They just posted, oh, we saw Thor, saw this, saw that." And it's like, do you guys have an extra 3 hours in the day that I don't have? Because I seriously wonder, some of my friends there, how do they have time to watch a whole season of something? And I don't get it.
Like,
but maybe it's because they're not doing those deep dives in something that's an intellectual challenge.
Well, it's where do you find time to do what you want? Like, I spent some time today playing some video games with Steve, and we had some fun and just talking shit to people online.
You're combining it with family. I mean, you're combining it with your together time.
Right. So
you're kind of like you're taking two swipes at the same. It's not just I'm playing a game at that point, though.
Right. Some quality time, some fun time, some downtime, some meditative time, to
There's
unwind.
4 things you're doing at once, even.
Because like even as I sit in the studio, like here, I'll move my camera. Like I got my bookshelf, and I got the Gulag Archipelago, which I'm working on now. A History of Western Philosophy. I've read through that, and that book is like 4 inches thick. Infinite Jest, David Foster Wallace. I want to read that next. David Foster Wallace again. Consider the Lobster. Fyodor Dostoevsky, the brothers Karamazov. I can't. Russian words are hard. You know, a few books.
And that's just a small section of a potential library there. You know?
And that's not showing what I have in my bedroom and what I take to work with me. I have the entire collection of Thomas Paine I want to get through. I have just so much I want to get through because I want to be able to articulate my thoughts in a way. I want to study philosophy, psychology, history, even biology, neurology. I want to study all of these things. I want to be able to know, like, what makes the brain work? Why do we think what we think? And I've read like 3 or 4 books by the Dalai Lama. I've done a lot of research. I've read the Buddhist Gospel. I've read a lot of stuff. I've spent 8 years studying mindfulness, meditation, Buddhism. I've taken the vow of Buddhism, so I'm technically a Buddhist now. And it's very hard to balance the life of a working class man, father, husband, employee, citizen, and then also co-host of a show and be able to speak. Yeah, so I don't know how you do it. You got 2 younger kids. My daughter's in college and my son's 16, so it's like
you know what you remember those days. You weren't
it was a blur.
reading like crazy, and then if you want to get ahead, our middle class upbringing is you work a few more hours, and you know. So there you go. Now instead of 8 hours, you know, when I first got out of my college classes there, I got my first real computer job. They were 10-hour days, and they were in Southfield, and I live out in Livingston County, so it was an hour plus, about an hour and a quarter drive.
Yeah.
So I drove an hour, 2.5 hours, and I worked a 10-hour day. Then I would go out and have fun stuff because I was only 19 or 20. And then I worked in a restaurant in Howell Sunday morning at 6 a.m. till 4 p.m., 3 or 4.
I know. Yeah, the 2 jobs.
And it's once in a while I worked a half a day in that Southfield job for for 55 hours instead of 50.
Yeah.
So I had no money for anything, let alone time, and I actually wrecked 2 cars falling asleep on the way to work.
Yeah. And I mean, you would talk about having no money. I remember working at Waste Management, and this is before I had my CDL, so I'm just making like $8.50 an hour. And Ashley was just born. We're living in Lansing, and I'm working in Whitmore Lake. And so that's an hour drive one way. And I couldn't afford gas because I was driving a 1990 Caprice Classic that was, had a, I cut out the exhaust from the manifold all the way back, converter, everything. It was 3-inch fence pipe, thanks cousin Jim. And, put a cherry bomb muffler on it. I mean, it was getting horrible gas mileage.
I did that with a car too.
And
I used a swing set pole though. I used a swing set pole that I found on the side of the road.
I even had a hole in my gas tank, and I didn't realize that for the longest time. I'm like, why am I getting shitty gas mileage? Every time I hit the brakes, I lose like $1, to just slosh out the front. But I had to collect cans. Michigan's got that 10-cent, refund.
Yeah.
For cans and bottles, and I'd have a bag I'd put on the side, canvas bag I'd put on the side of the garbage truck, and I'd be ripping over garbage bags. That's how desperate I was.
Yeah.
In between stops, and I'd grab all the returnables, put it in that bag, and right outside the shop, there was it was an IGA. It was a grocery store that I could return all my empties, and I needed that because I needed to get the gas to get home. And then back to work the next morning just so I could do it all over again. And I even picked up Jeff Daniels' trash out in Chelsea from his house, and he threw away about $15 worth of returnables. So I'm a big Jeff Daniels fan. I just hope he doesn't rape any boys or women, and I can still be a Jeff Daniels fan. But, I mean, it was rough. It was a rough beginning. And it was just hard work. And like I said, $8.50 an hour throwing trash, and I just busted my ass. And they seen I was a hard worker, so they said, "Hey, well, you go get your permit for your CDL. $40. You study, you take the test." And I took the test. I studied. I paid the $40, and they let me drive on the permit. And they provided the truck. They provided the road test, and I got my CDL. And I worked for them for about 2 years, and it was just hard work, and I got my way through it. But I mean, man, before that I had to go on welfare for a while to help. We were on WIC to get free, food and whatnot for our daughter. And man,
so you understand a little bit about the social programs too. So
yeah,
yeah.
I needed it. I totally needed it. I mean, I used to get gifts for Ashley when she was a baby, like a dress, and we'd keep the tag on it because we would need to take that back to Target just to get milk and bread, because this is back in '99 when Target just started switching to where they'd carry food.
Yeah.
And thank God they did, because me and Chrissy, we were going to save a lot. Our kids would eat, but we had nothing. So if we could find $20 to get us through till next Friday, we'd go to Save a Lot. We'd buy just the cheapest whatever we could find just to get us through, like chili or spaghetti, something we could make one meal and eat on it for a week. And but that's what we had to do. So it's not like so when I hear stuff like white privilege, it just pisses me off. It's like like my white skin helped me. No, my hard work helped me.
Yeah.
My determination to not struggle.
You watch Jerry Springer, there's plenty of poor white people that are going to struggle through life too. Mm-hmm. I can't speak on everyone else because I'm not, and that's the thing. Typically, people who say white privilege are not white. So it's like, well, hey, if I'm not allowed to speak on your behalf, you can't speak on mine.
Well, I just think it's so racist. It's funny, the same people who scream white privilege are also screaming racism, but they're the ones who are racist.
Yeah, and honestly,
because it's a definition of racism.
My industry, it's male dominated, and if you come in as a female and technical, you're gonna get picked first. It's just the way it is. First of all, because your managers tend to be a bunch of males. Yeah. And I have to say, but there's bias right there. Mm-hmm. You're gonna tend to be greenhoused, is what I call it, where you send the guys out to go do these horrible jobs, and then why don't you learn this? Why don't you just do this? Mm-hmm. Well, heck, I wasn't allowed to I wasn't greenhoused, like that. Yeah. And so when it comes to the science and technical, the STEM fields and that, if you're interested in it, you actually have more of an advantage in the real workplace as a female. I do the business stuff, mm-hmm. and I'm gonna, for being an evil business environment, that is the most colorblind, gender blind place you can be.
Yeah.
If you have an excitement about you, if you have a drive, you're going to go farther. And if anything, like if you're a minority or a female, you're welcomed in more. Mm-hmm. You're just not another typical guy trying to do something. Yeah. And I just don't buy it anymore. And when it comes to people who count, look at Donald Trump's triumph. Everyone knocks on President Trump, but first female campaign manager to successfully run a bid for president. Mm-hmm. And considering the candidate and considering how undergunned she was, media was against her, the funding was against her, her own candidate was making, she's brilliant in honesty. And that's the thing that gets me on this is stop making, I think it's just people making excuses for why they're not there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just think it's interesting. Like you mentioned earlier, like the whole cyclical thing of, the lower class, middle class, upper class, the way society is now with the demonization of these different groups. And it's funny when you mention that it's middle class, the people who, these leftist people or these communist, Marxist, whatever you want to call them, they pretend that they're trying to support the lower class. And they're saying, oh, look at these poor people who are oppressed. They don't care about them. They just hate the people who are rich. They hate the upper class because they can't get to that point. So they try to use the people in the lower class to take down the people in the upper class. So then they can be part of the upper class so they can have the power. And then they'll go back to saying, I don't give a shit about the lower class. And that's what the cycle is. And that's always been there. And Orwell laid it out pretty clearly. And so I don't know if I went off on a tangent there or what, but maybe I just need to get that off my chest. But I just don't buy people who are saying, look at me, I'm a victim, because you can make your own way. I come from low class, and I worked my way hard to get into the middle class. And it's individuals. Individuals make the difference. Take control of your life. And that's what goes back to that book idea I have is we need to resurrect the idea of the individual who isn't the victim, but who is the hero.
Yeah. And these are heroes. These are people who do the right thing when no one's watching. They do the right thing when they're not going to get a payoff for it. When they're not going to. And, you could say he's a good guy, he's a decent guy, but he finds a $100 bill and just like, hey, well, they should have held it onto it better than that.
Yeah.
Or, if no one notices, I'm going to keep it. It's subtleties like that is what build who you are.
Mm-hmm. And I've been there. I've been that kid I've literally found $100 and $20 bills, on the exit mat of a party store, a liquor store, whatever, a convenience store. And I kept it. I was a teenager and I pocketed that shit, man. And I kept it because I come from poor. And my philosophy was like, hey, if I can take it, I'm going to take it.
I think sometimes poor is greedy. I hate to say it, but, another Bible thing that I think is they say money is the root of all evil. I get tired of people saying it's like, no, it's the lust of money. And I hate to say it, but sometimes I think the poor are more lustful for money than someone who's average or someone who actually might be better off, but quietly donates a ton of stuff without getting their name on it. Mm-hmm. And I've seen that where I got to win the lottery. I got to win the lottery. I got to have it, and they're poor. It becomes an obsession to have these things. And to me, that's what it's talking about right there. That lust, that hunger for it.
Yeah. Well, see, you mentioned the lottery, and instantly 1984 clicks in my head because they actually explain it in a book clearly how
I missed that in the movie, so go ahead.
The lottery is engineered to give the lower class people hope that they can advance into the middle class or upper class.
Something always rubbed me wrong.
It's a game. It's a game. It's a scam to give people false hope. And then it's interesting when I was watching that documentary on the charisma of Hitler. When Hitler first came to power, when he was elected chancellor before World War II, first thing that he did is he built prison camps for political dissenters and enemies of his political ideology, and he would put including Jews and these political, criminals in there. And the guards would go to these people and say, oh, you'll be out soon. You'll be out in a week, or you'll be out in a year, or you'll be out soon. And it was all lies. Yeah. And it's the same thing that happened in the Soviet Union. They would call these tenors. And, I haven't read the full book, but I made my kids read it, and Steve's read the whole thing. So he knows more about the Gulag Archipelago than I do, which is a good thing. It's simultaneously a bad thing for me because I'm like, hey, you need to read this book. Well, I haven't read it. But anyway, they did the same thing to these people, and they called them tenors. The minimum sentence was 10 years. And they say, oh, you're getting out when your 10 years is up. Then 10 years would come by, and it's like, oh, nope, you're still in prison. And they'd stay in prison for 20 years, 30 years, or until they just die.
I think that's why people who get caught by North Korea, like this last one. I'm watching this, and he's doing the what's his name is giving his confession about trying to rip the poster off. Mm-hmm. And you can tell, I was swayed by the administration of the United States to take this important political slogan and to demoralize the people of North Korea. Mm-hmm. I planned it ahead of time. I put on my quietest boots, the best for sneaking. And I'm sorry. We say that at work. I'm like, I'm going to go to your cube and I'm going to wear my quietest shoes, the best for sneaking.
Oh man.
It's like right there. I'm thinking, If this was me and I know I'm going to die, I'm going to just sit there and stand up and say, "You guys all suck," or like flip off the poster of Kim Jong Il and Kim Jong Un, and I'm like, or moon him or something. I'd be like, why don't they instead of just saying, "I humbly apologize," blah blah blah. I'd be like, But then I thought about it, and you're right. It's that hope of, if I just go through this, they'll let me go.
Yeah.
If I just do this, and then they probably do the lottery effect on a few people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. It's maybe, and let's get into psychology. Maybe it's something in the human brain that has you hoping on that one. You're better off digging in a beach looking for a certain grain of sand than winning the lottery.
Well,
something in our minds are trained to go after that impossibility.
And you go to college and you learn this through marketing and whatnot, but it's also I can't help it. And this is where I have this yin-yang battle, this Taoism battle in my head, because I have this foundation in Buddhism, but yet I have a full understanding of Nietzsche's teachings of pessimism and realism, and I battle with this so frequently, like every day I battle with this, and
you just need to simplify your life. Just watch a movie all day long.
No, what I'm getting at is I'm still sticking with the lottery thing. How evil of a society have we become when we use hope as a manipulation tool?
Isn't that kind of like The Running Man or Hunger Games or something?
Yeah, it's all of those things. But this isn't a movie. It's not a book. I mean, this is what we do and what we have done as human beings throughout almost all of history. Is we use hope as a tool to keep people dumbed down and imprisoned and keep them from questioning.
What is watching sports? I've never been a huge sports person because to me it just didn't make sense.
See,
if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go play the game. To me, it's like a way of expressing those instinctive male urges without having to actually do it.
It's living vicariously.
Yeah, that's what movies are. That's why I've had people actually tell me, I know police detectives. Well, I watch CSI, and they filled the wound up with wax, and they could tell what kind of knife stabbed them. And it's like real basic biology. That would never work, but they do it. But there's people that believe they're smart. You remember Wayne's World? The wife is, we're smart. We watch a lot of TV.
And this comes again. It's this battle that I have, like.
But maybe they are, Daryl. Maybe they are. You're wasting a lot of time thinking about this crap. You could just zone out, go in front of a sports game, go to the movies for 4 hours, and then now you enjoyed life. You've had that. When I go to Disney, I'm walking in there and it's like I'm thinking Matrix. Yeah. I see they're using my wristband to figure out. I go to a ride and it says, "Hey, welcome, Joe, to this ride." And I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the technology behind how they knew I was on the ride. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, they're going to be tracking me all over the park. They're going to see how much I spend on my account. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a science to this. And it's like I go to Cedar Point. It's like I'm watching The Matrix. Yeah. I'm watching where they're putting their point of sale stuff. I'm watching where I can't sit and just enjoy something for the mindless mind rot. And maybe that's the problem with you too. You're not just enjoying. So maybe we're overthinking and we're wrong. Maybe those people who just shut their minds off. But here's what it does. Here's where I'm going to counter that is change, innovation, people who actually make a difference and make history. What percentage of the population would you say that's been? And it's actually been pretty consistent.
Oh, probably not even 0.25%.
Maybe you're destined to be a 0.25%. Actually, I heard it was more like 8 or 9%, but.
I don't even see. The pessimist says no. It's nowhere even near that.
So here's the deal. You think about these things. Of course, the next step is actually doing. But you get the people who are the billionaires. Typically, it's not because they got lucky or they did this. Typically, it's people who. That's just a coincidence of what they do.
Well, you're touching on something. You're touching on something that really stirs a lot of emotion in me, and I got to be careful in keeping that in check. It's why are we doing what we're doing by just having this talk? We're having a conversation, and I don't care, really about the camera because this is a real thing. And why do we do what we do? Why do I say what I say? Why do I think what I think? Why do I try to study so much to learn what I learn? And why have I built myself purposely with a foundation of philosophy and psychology and history and humanism and all of these things? And my father, when I was 2 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night crying. It was a 2-year-old, and most people are like, well, how do you remember 2 years old? Well, because when I woke up, my mom picked me up, cradled me, took me into the living room.
Traumatic thing, yeah.
And then my father wakes up, who was a alcoholic at the time. He was working a job he hated. This is what my memory tells me. And then he proceeded to literally beat the shit out of my mom. And I'm watching it happen. And then we leave. And my mom's driving. I'm in the front seat. I'm not even buckled up. I'm just looking up at her, and she's bloody. She's crying. And we're just driving in the middle of the night. And I don't know where we went to, but that was when I literally, as a 2-year-old, felt like my soul being ripped in two. And the only thing that I remember from my childhood as a goal or destination in life is I wanted to be a good dad. I didn't want to replicate that in my kids. Now, I'm not a perfect dad, but one thing I realized in wanting to be a good dad is, holy shit, does that take a lot? Because I knew from my childhood years later that do as I say, not as I do, doesn't work. You have to be an example. If you want to be a good parent, you got to be the example. And that's what I'm saying. Holy shit, that's a lot of work. And so it's led me on this quest in so many different paths. I want to engage in relationships with girls who I knew were, just for lack of a better term, sluts. And they weren't literally sluts, but they just weren't what I was looking for. Because I was looking for that woman to marry and have a family with, and that's when I found Chrissy.
Pretty early.
Right. So when we did that show on relationships, I thought it was funny because she's the only woman that I've ever been with.
Yeah.
And you would think, oh, well, you must be Catholic or something. No, I'm not. It just happened to be that way.
Sometimes what you want is pretty clear.
You're right. So that moment crystallized kind of what I wanted to be. And you
didn't have self-discovery.
Right. So I'm learning this stuff
kind of how I was
as
too.
I go.
These things would have been fun, and maybe in retrospect, maybe I could have done this or this or this. But then I always knew from the get-go it's not what I wanted, so I didn't waste my time with it in a way.
Right.
Plus, I was dorky and shy. But I know if I actually would have done those things, it probably would have changed to who I am now for the worse.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of miss that clarity in a way, because there are certain things you're just very clear about that you don't need. And when it's a positive thing like that, that's good. You're not wasting time.
I hate the fact that as an adult, because I try to be kind to people, but then we live in a society where kindness is constantly mistaken for weakness, and I'm not weak, and I constantly have to
We're in the wrong society for that. Honestly.
I have to remind people, look,
this is America, not Japan.
I'm not a weak person, so don't treat me like I'm weak just because I'm nice to you. Don't take advantage of me and I've developed this weird reputation at work, of being a hard ass, but I enjoy that because along with that comes respect. I do my job,
but not in a cruel, unjudgmental,
no,
unbiased way. Though there is that aspect too. Where
I
don't understand why someone's a jerk. I just don't get it. What is the point of being a jerk to nice people, even nicer people? Then that's one thing I just never got. I never understood that. But
yeah, there's a lot of lessons that I've learned through life. But as far as speaking honestly about things, and trying to find time, going back to I watched it on the news, so it must be real. I searched it on the internet, so it must be true. I went to yourright.com, so I'm justified. But you haven't thought about it.
Is that real, or did you just make that up?
I just made that up, and I
Okay,
think
no, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that. Like, I'm sorry, but
well,
you're right.
I think I might have borrowed that from somebody else.
That's my phrase for you did 10 seconds of research to validate what you want, to validate your emotion on something.
Right.
Which is, you see that with people, each end of it, like Trump with KKK in there, in his name. And it's like, okay, you might not like him for this and this and this, but honestly, that's a pretty serious, thing to throw at somebody.
Oh, yeah.
So my response has always been, really, why don't you go public with this knowledge that he's part of that group?
Well, and there's also
why are you holding this back? And then they kind of look at you like you're dumb. But and they don't understand that by them trying to be nice, they're throwing probably one of the worst things they could say about someone that they actually don't know. To me, that's actually one of the meanest things you could do.
And it just seems like a lot of times too, with the way people, they don't have time to think, they don't have time to research.
I don't think they want to. I really don't think they want to have. When it comes down to it, I think we kind of figured it out is they want that validation. I'm right. They want that groupness of belonging. So they pick a team to belong to and like, oh, look, Facebook shows that 90% of the world agrees with me.
Yeah.
And they just can spout off in their own echo chambers. And how dare you come against me? Well, I'm going to come against you just to hope that I get 30 likes and they get 2 likes. And that means the world supports and validates who I am again. It's validation. It's ego.
Well, I thought Jordan Peterson said something that was pretty interesting. That it's not social media isn't an echo chamber; it's an amplifier. So it takes your ridiculous idea and amplifies it because you're right. It's permanent, and you just put it out there to the world. So it amplifies and every time you get a like, it's validation.
It's a hit of what's in your brain there.
Dopamine.
It's a hit of,
Dopamine.
Dopamine hits.
Yes.
That's what all these take you away from reality things are.
Yeah, it's the
when your team wins when someone you don't even know kicks a ball through a goal or throws something through a hoop or
and then you how say, in the world does
that doesn't affect you.
No, but
period.
You say we.
Did you have $1 million on this game?
No.
Okay, if I had $1 million on the game, sure I might cheer. But you don't. And your life changes zero if that person did that or didn't do it. So why is it so important to you?
Well, see, I'm not a Bengal
whole flag bearing. He-Man, how dare you? I'm a Bears fan. You're effing. I don't get what. How does that change your life?
Well, you see, everything is kind of related. Just to touch on it lightly in the lighthearted ways, as I'm not a Bengals fan. I live near Cincinnati, but
okay.
I would always rather the Bengals win because when people are driving home, they're in a better mood. So maybe they'll drive a little better. When they lose, you got a bunch of alcohol fueled testosterone that's in a bad mood, and then they get behind a wheel and go home. So I think
like when the Red Wings would lose, I'd make my Facebook profile the team that just beat them.
Oh, jeez. You're just like...
And I would have people threaten me in a very serious way.
Oh, man, what's wrong with people?
I'm like, well, they're the winners. Or like I know a couple of people who are huge, like, Dallas Cowboy fans. I'm like, did you grow up in Dallas? Did you have family in Dallas? I'm like, well, why is it... I don't get it. Do they have the prettiest colors? So all I can think of is it's an escapism to not doing something real.
Yes.
It's a narcotic. It's like being on the holodeck in Star Trek.
It's escapism. It's total escapism.
Because you're not out there. Either you got to be working your ass off like a slave, working, like you think about pre-industrial revolution where you're Irish and you're dirt poor and you work pounding rivets in the Titanic or whatever boat it is, and you're working 18-hour days, 7 days a week, and at the end of the day, you're still dirt poor no matter what.
This brings it right back to where I'm viewing the way society and people are with what you just talked about, escapism. it just is a perfect blend again of A Brave New World in 1984. 1984 is heavily, based on escapism. 1984 is heavily based on work. You know, freedom
collectivism, work.
Another slogan in 1984 is freedom is slavery.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it's going to lead you down all these tracks of things that are demoralizing for your soul and demoralizing for your person that go against the common good.
So I just.
So what happens in 1984? You have your little slight inner party people, was it?
Yeah, you have the inner party
that get the good coffee and the good chocolate.
Exactly. Then wine. They
actually have wine. Yeah. Where these other people haven't even tasted wine. They don't even know what it is.
It's gin, and that's another similar thing. Is they're heavily into gin or alcohol, and just like in Brave New World, it's that Selma ecstasy style drug. It's here you go. Don't think about reality.
It's not going to be the good stuff, of course.
It's escapism, and this is why I used to be for legalization of marijuana because as far as on the, like alcohol, because, I used to be
it's a control thing. You naturally don't want to be against government. I naturally lean away a control of government.
Well,
Secondly, there's a lot of other realistic uses that there's a business uses. In the drug, in the drug managing itself, there's a business in that.
Yeah. So I'm for the medicinal uses of it still. I used to be for the recreational uses of it because I used to be a big pothead and I'd love to be able to smoke it again, but I can't because I have a DOT license and I am subject to randoms. So I work. But at the same time, I realize, like, we can do a show on that about addiction, is like I was one of the, what they call the 15% who is actually physically and emotionally, psychologically addicted to marijuana. Yeah. And so when I quit, it was a hard deal. It was very hard.
And there's that, but then I watch my neighbors. I watch these people who are idiots that don't function well anymore. But they're really good at this marijuana thing. They're good at their miracle drug and this and that. And they get very annoyed and pissed if you even question. They can't discuss logically what's good or bad. But then it just zaps away their ambition. Zaps away their drive. Yeah. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about, or if you're talking about. Yeah. And also, anything like that. There's that physical addiction too.
It was escapism, but it was a lot of heavy addiction towards like, oh man, I got it.
But you could say the same thing for sugar, sweet, salt, sugar, fat, and masturbation too.
True. Well, I would. Like if I was watching, if I was home alone with like my daughter when she was a baby and like, oh man, her diaper needs changed, I would have to go get high to change the diaper. Like it would bring me down, and so that I had a problem with it. But some people, like I said, we can save it for another show on addiction because man, I've been through pill addiction, alcohol addiction, marijuana addiction, sugar addiction, food addiction, and it's one of those things like when you're an addict, it's always there. So I have a lot of skeletons in my closet in my past that I'm okay to open that door and we can go down there. I'm fine with that because I've been through the darkest, deepest depression imaginable for myself. And I'm not afraid of that stuff anymore. And it's like the Voldemort Harry Potter thing. It's like, he who shall not be named. Well, it's like, if you don't talk about it, you're giving it power. So I'm okay talking about this stuff. I'm an open book. And because that's, again, it goes back to the fatherhood thing. Like, lead by example, do as I say, not as I do. That's bullshit. Do as I do. And I can be one of two things. A good example or a terrible warning. Do as I do. Yeah. If I do something that's wrong, don't do that. If I do something that's right, do that.
Yeah, and I think the trying, like I can think of situations where my mom or my dad fell pretty flat on something to do, but I know what their intent was. I know where they wanted, where they tried to be, and that alone goes far. It's funny as my dad would not want like his dad. And I just talked to him today too, which was cool.
Oh, okay.
I talked about going to Disney. Now I'll tell you, we did no vacations growing up. We didn't go to the beach. We didn't go to Disney. We didn't do any of that stuff. You know, to him, as working was, you know, what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And not being abusive was his thing, like his dad. And he came so far. I hear the stories about what his dad did,
Mm-hmm.
being a womanizer, being, you know, basically beating the piss out of him all the time. And it's like, wow, my dad came so much further
Mm-hmm.
from what he grew up as with that. This is not my example. You know,
Right.
he did not want to do the junking thing because he said, I'm going to get a skill. My dad didn't have a skill. He did junking. And it's funny, as he retires, he starts junking himself and said, you know, I would have been better off if I did this. You know?
Yeah.
But he came to odds with it.
Yeah.
Which was a part of growing up too, is getting over your dad. That's what led to my parents' divorces. He never got over that until later in life.
Mm-hmm.
But he made a comment when I said this, and he's mentally kind of not with it like he used to be, dealing with a disease. But
Mm-hmm.
he said, we should have done more of that. I should have done more of that when I mentioned we went to Disney. I was like, wow, that's like, I've been repeating that. That's my change. We didn't do that stuff growing up. I'm going to make sure I do this stuff growing up with my kids.
Yeah.
I'm in Cub Scouts. I'm in trips. I'm in all these parental things that my parents are kind of absent in.
Yeah, and you take your daughter to a dance recital. Which,
oh, God, yeah. We didn't do any of that crap.
Yeah.
And
so how do you?
But then hear him say that after all these years, it's like, wow, you know, that's
that's a big deal. That humility, and that's one thing I've done with my kids is like I've told them like, look, I'm not perfect, and there's times where I can be a complete tyrant, and I'm an excellent yeller, and I know that I can put the fear of God into my kids, and I wish I was better at that.
But are you compensating for the absent father thing, or who really didn't have the moral code?
See, I don't. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard being that.
People go the other way around sometimes. They tend to, like, if you were given every single toy growing up and giving every single freedom you could, you know, let's say they're apologetic because they thought the situation was bad, so you're given all kinds, you know, yeah, I've seen this with people growing up poor sometimes where the single parent will go crazy giving everything they can.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you look at a budget, it's like, no, you can't afford these, but they'll do it because they feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
But then as a parent, suddenly it's like, if you didn't have a lot of rules, you might have a shitload of rules because you'd see that as possibly a mistake you're correcting.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen that trend.
Yeah. I don't know.
It's hard to say.
It's rough. Like, I don't know how you have time to even, I mean, we've been doing this for over an hour, and I don't know how you've had time to do it because I know you're really busy. You work, you have your own personal business that you run on the side.
Right now they're watching they're watching some kiddie movie, and it's movie night. So I can't sit and watch a movie.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, because it's just
not unless I'm like really into it, but then that's not gonna be anything that's from Disney.
Yeah, some of those Disney movies are pretty good, but some of the newer ones, like Frozen, is just completely trash. But that's just me. That's my opinion. But I know I got meatloaf that I made, a nice big old 4-pound meatloaf, and I probably should go and eat it. So, but we're gonna. I don't know. I kind of like this conversation we had. And it goes back to like, why are we doing this show? I just feel like the genuine conversations just between two guys, two dads, just talking about life, talking about ideas, sharing ideas and thoughts and our issues we're dealing with. It takes me back to when I was a kid, when I would hear adults talk, I'd like to hang around. And
I think that's the difference in us. A lot of kids have no interest in that. I always had an interest in how it works, what's going on, you know, like that social that awareness.
Mm-hmm. See, I was always interested in like what people are saying because I'm interested by ideas and conversation, and if it's a genuine, authentic conversation, I'm interested, and I don't care what they're talking about as long as people are being real. So if you're watching this and you like our show, you like what we're doing here, give us some ideas, what you'd like us to talk about. You know, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Your Two Dads. Click like on the video below. Leave us a comment. Subscribe. Please give us some kind of feedback. We enjoy it, especially criticism. I really look forward to criticism to try to be better and produce a better show. Joe, I appreciate the time, tonight, and it's been a good talk, and I look forward to doing it again soon. And all right, man. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay.